I remember when family beach trips meant sand castles and laughter. Dad would grill burgers as Mom and my sisters splashed in the waves. After he died, everything changed. Mom remarried Derek and bought that fancy Malibu beach house. Suddenly, there was no room for me at family gatherings. 8 years of excuses and seeing their photos online became my normal. Then I spotted that rundown resort just 3 miles from Mom's place. Sometimes the best revenge comes with an ocean view. Hey everyone, before I dive deeper into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy stories about family justice, served cold as ocean breeze. The earliest memory I have is running through sprinklers with my sisters in our modest backyard in Portland. Dad would chase us around pretending to be a sea monster, while Mom laughed from her lawn chair. We were middle class, comfortable but never extravagant. As the middle child between my older sister Jasmine and younger sister Amanda, I learned to find my place in the family ecosystem. Dad worked as a high school English teacher, Mom as a part-time nurse. They saved all year for our annual week at the Oregon coast, renting the same 3-bedroom cottage every August. Family is where your story begins, Bobby Dad would say, pointing to the horizon as we watched the sunset. No matter what happens in life, you always have us. When Dad died suddenly from a heart attack my freshman year of college, those words echoed in my grief. I was 19, struggling through engineering classes while processing the loss of my hero. Mom fell apart for months. We all did. The family beach trip that summer was somber but healing, a tribute to Dad and his love for those traditions. We will keep being a family, Mom promised as we scattered some of his ashes in the ocean. Your father would want that more than anything. I believed her then. I had no reason not to. 2 years after Dad died, Mom met Derek at a charity fundraiser for the hospital where she worked. He was 20 years her senior, a real estate developer with silver-streaked hair and the confidence that comes with serious money. Their courtship was brief, and before I knew it, my mother was Mrs. Peterson. Derek was polite enough to me and my sisters, but there was always something calculated about his interactions with us. He would ask about my engineering studies with the detached interest of someone checking items off a list. With my mother, he was different, lavishing her with gifts and attention she had been starved for since Dad's death. Derek is buying us a beach house in Malibu, Mom announced over a holiday dinner 6 months after their wedding. 6 bedrooms, private beach access, and a view you wouldn't believe. What about the Oregon cottage, I asked, thinking of Dad and our traditions. Bobby, that place was falling apart, Mom said dismissively. This is an upgrade. You'll see when you visit. The property was breathtaking. 3 stories of modern architecture perched on a cliff with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Pacific. The master bedroom suite was larger than my entire apartment. There were separate guest rooms for each of us kids, a home theater, and an infinity pool that seemed to pour into the ocean below. This will be our new family gathering spot, Mom said proudly as Derek stood beside her, his arm around her waist. Holidays, birthdays,